Hi everybody, welcome back. We're talking to Sean Toohey right now. Sean happens to be a member of the school committee. Sean, how many terms have you been on the school committee?
Two.
2 terms, and the term for a school committee is different from that as a mayor or a city council candidate because that's a 4-year term, is it not?
That is correct.
Okay,
seeking a third term.
So you've been on there for a total of 8 years so far, seeking a third term for another 4 years.
Yes.
You know, can you tell me this? What do you think the compelling factor is that you see that you're confronted with, that you're faced with on the school committee that's facing you folks right now?
Well, I mean, recently what just came out, the superintendent provided us the report on MCAS. So I would say immediately that is something that needs to be, we've heard the term drill down, and superintendent has indicated to us that he's certainly going to do that and drill down. So I would say MCAS is certainly on the forefront of our minds right now and is the challenge, especially on our subgroups. There have been some gains, significant gains at the high school.
Can you tell us what the definition of drill down?
Well, I think with drill down to me seems is to, between him and Mary Malone, who's in charge, Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum, them to identify where the problem areas are throughout the district. There's a couple schools that certainly have stood out in the last report that I've seen, that we saw, particularly Nettle and Pentucket Lake, to give you a couple right now. So they're going to kind of look down from top to bottom and kind of do a drilling down assessment of what really needs to happen across the board. So that's my definition, and I think the definition the superintendent gave us as far as drilling down. And
if you could also give us an indication of subgroups, what would the definition of subgroups be, and how does that impact the overall score?
Well, the subgroups, you know, you have English language learners, you have special education. Those are a couple subgroups that I can give you. As far as them impacting, you know, when you have a larger special education, for example, which is inclusive of the overall educational process, you need to make sure that those groups tend to bring the scores down more so than others we've seen. So they're really identifying those needs, and they're taking the corrective action to make sure that we move those scores in the right direction.
Can I ask you this question? You may or may not know the answer to this specifically, but
I'll do my best.
If we're talking about the different subgroups and the different subgroups that we're dealing with, and how they may, by some sort of a let's say, other issues being able to affect their scores, that affects the overall score to a lower degree. If we were to extract subgroups as a practical matter, just for the sake of example, if we were to take subgroups out of the equation, how do our MCAS scores measure up?
It's an interesting question, and to be completely honest with you, I can't give you a definitive number, but what I can tell you is they would be certainly pointing north. So it's an interesting question, and we've looked at that. So again, it's another function, I think, of drilling down on not only just the buildings but also subgroups and across the board, and that's what we're doing, and that's what the administration has indicated that they're going to do.
Budget-wise, how is the school committee shaping up for, how have you shaped up during the course of this past year, and what are your expectations during the coming year, with there being a lot of things on the plate for the city of Haverhill they happen to deal with, in $54 million commitments, additional commitments beyond that of the debt of the Hale Hospital, and given the fact that the school system takes a larger portion of the city's budget every year, only by necessity, that's how it is for 350 other cities and towns in Massachusetts, takes about, what, 55 or 60% of what the overall budget happens to be.
In that range, yes.
You know, is there any degree of apprehension that you or that other members of the school committee have with regard to how you're going to have to cope with this, or are you looking over your shoulder for any more cuts or issues?
When I was president in 2010, the impressive thing, I should say, that we started to do when I was president, that we're doing going forward, is how we prepare that budget. Myself and when I was president and vice president Bevilacqua decided to we've decided to do the budget process a little different. And what I mean by that is simply have the superintendent and the administration formulate a game plan of what we have for resources, what we have for services that we can deliver based on what we have for money, and provide us something for us to make informed decisions, where before, in the past, it's been going building to building, department head, you know, giving us their wish list and really drawing out that process. But we only have so much money, as you know, and I believe that process has streamlined that process for us to make informed decisions, and that's what we've done, and that's what we intend to do in the future.
If I can ask you this question too, and this goes back maybe a number of administrations, back to when Arthur Tate happened to be the superintendent of schools for the city of Haverhill. He was not in favor of, he understood conceptually what the basics and the inclination and the reasoning was for a charter school, but he was not so much in favor of them, he said, because he could not afford to be in favor of them to the degree that he'd like, because of how much money he feared that might take out of his own budget. Given the fact when there's a student that goes to a charter school, what type of figure do you attribute to that student? About $6,000 or $8,000 that goes to that charter school, is that correct?
Yeah, I don't have the definitive number, but it's in that neighborhood. But
if I talk about that, and just
sure,
to give you the specific, and how do you deal with this? You know, in one charter school that happens to be in the city, it's well thought of. They do, I guess, they do a fine job. But with the 300 students that go there, at a minimum of $6,000 per student, that's $1.8 million to $2 million that's taken out of the school budget for the charter school, which means that's that much less that the Haverhill school system has for themselves. How do you reconcile something of that type?
Well, it is a tough balance, and that's where you know, we have to maybe do a better job at the state level for not pitting one versus the other, because they're all our children, as you know, and our job is to educate all of our children. I feel I'm one actually in favor of choice. I'm a firm believer of choice, always have been. The problem, like I said, still it's there. I think it's here to stay, and rightfully so. It's unfortunate. It's, you know, on a monetary reason that it pits one against the other, but we do our best based on the resources that we have, and we've been doing it, and we'll continue to do that. So I think we're doing a fairly decent job in balancing the two.
Are there any innovative systems or things that you think that you might like to revisit that perhaps were not implemented during the period your administration, when you happen to be head of the school committee, or during your tenure on the school committee, that you think you might want to go back to and revisit as maybe an innovative thing that should be put back on the table right now for consideration?
It's an interesting question. You always talk about revenue. I would probably like to revisit raising a little bit of money for advertising. I think when you talk about Arthur Tate, I don't think that was handled appropriately. You know, bus advertising, things of that nature. And I think what we allocated and budgeted for at the time wasn't up, but I don't think we implemented a good strategy and marketing plan in order for that to be effective. So that's one small area that I would, you know, certainly take a look at as well. Also, I would look at school choice. I've been a large proponent for finding out the reasons why our kids are going to other districts. You know, there's as you know, school choice, you opt in for that program, you pay for kids to go out, and you receive money for kids coming in. And
these are people that are going outside the city.
Yes.
And it's almost like the same parallels with a charter school. The money follows the child.
Right. We need to do a much better job, and we just talked about this the other day, last week in our meeting, is similar to an exit interview. Why we need to find out earlier if we can, but also more importantly is why you're leaving. And we need, once we find out and drill down and find those answers, why they're doing that, I think we have a better chance of, in the future, retaining and recruiting those individuals, and I think we'll see those numbers drop significantly over time. But we need to identify the data, review that data, and make some decisions with that information.
Thanks very much. Sean Toohey, you know, incumbent school committee candidate running for a third term. We wish you the best of luck.
Thank you so much, Frank.
Thank you, Sean.
I appreciate it. Thank you.